Hi everybody, Jennifer Blevins-Smith with Integral Clinic Solutions, and you're watching my YouTube channel, Navigating the Business of Medicine. Today we're going to talk about the common confusions with credentialing. There are three main points that actually confuse a lot of people when it comes to the credentialing process, and they can have a huge impact on your business and your income and revenue when it comes to actually opening your doors and practicing. The first point I would like to talk about is disassociating yourself with any former groups or employers that you used to work for. Many providers will work for a group right out of school, and then they will decide that they want to open their own practice. One of the biggest confusions when it comes to credentialing is you could call the payer and let them know what you're doing, and if you don't talk to the right person on the other end that will understand what you're saying, or you're not able to explain it in the way that they need to hear in order to understand it, you could put yourself in kind of a pickle and get some misinformation that you will base other decisions off of. So let's say you worked for another group or employer and you were able to see Blue Cross Blue Shield patients, Aetna patients, Cigna patients, United Healthcare, and whatever small plans might be in your area. When you work for a group, you are credentialed under the group. Now, you might be credentialed as an individual within that group, or you might also be credentialed as a group in the group. It just depends. You would have to call and find out. But the big thing about this is you are associated with the tax ID number of that group. That means that if they look you up in the system, they're going to assume that the MPI number that you're going to be using as your individual with a tax ID number is considered in network. So you might be calling, or someone on your behalf might be calling the payers to kind of figure out what you need to be doing in the early stages of credentialing, and they'll say, oh yeah, you're already credentialed, you're already contracted. Well, that could be true. You could already be credentialed, but you're credentialed under that group. You're associated with that group. You need to be disassociated and basically kind of start from scratch and have them removed from your profile in their system and add your new one. Sometimes they will honor the individual credentialing that is done for you, and they just say that you need to send over some basic information on the new location, the new tax ID, the new group NPI, and I have a video about the NPI too if you're not familiar with that, but you will need it for credentialing. And then they'll say, okay, you're already credentialed, we need that information in order to get you a new contract for this entity, this tax ID, and then we will send it to you. Even though this might sound like it's more straightforward, it can still take quite a bit of time, at least 30 days. So don't take for granted that this is going to be a fast process in any way of the word. I promise you, it all takes time. The second thing kind of is related to the first part, but the second part of the confusion is what's the difference between credentialing and contracting. So credentialing is basically they have done a background check on you essentially in an employer type way, and they're making sure that you are good enough to be a doctor, a practitioner, any kind of medical provider associated with them and considered in network. They are comfortable with you representing them and seeing their patients or their insurance beneficiaries, and that's why they need to do the whole confirming and validation of your education, your work history, your malpractice, all of that. Now, once you're credentialed and they say you're good and they give you the stamp of approval, then they will send you a contract, and the contract has to be associated with where you're going to be working. So the credentialing essentially is for you as an individual provider. The contracting is for wherever you're going to be working. So it could be you if you're a sole proprietor and you're not going to have anybody else working for you, and you're not a group, but you're still your own tax ID, you're still your own entity. So the contracts would need to be under your name, your new tax ID number for the business. If you're going to have a group, it needs to be under the group. So it would have the group tax ID number associated, the group MPI number associated. And then you would also list any other providers that would be working with you in there that you will be billing under for insurance under that contract as well. So there's two steps. You have the credentialing and the contracting. Now that's why it can take up to 90 to 120 days, because when they talk about credentialing and contracting, it's the contracting is after the credentialing. So you have to get through the credentialing part first. And if you're starting from scratch, or if you're disassociating from one group and moving to another one, they might make you restart the whole credentialing process. So if they do, it's going to be longer. And like I said before, even if they will honor whatever is existing, it can still take about 30 days. So then you get the contract, you look it over, you negotiate if you need to, and the signing of that contract is not the date it's effective, and that is my third thing. The third misconception or confusion with contract and credentialing is that the date you're signing that contract, a lot of providers think it's effective, and that's not true. Usually on the first page of the contract, it will say what is the date the contract is effective. Now, there might be some out there that say it is effective the date in which it is signed, but that's not super common, especially with the major payers. They will put it out a month or two from when you're signing, because they say they need to have time to put the information in the system and get their systems updated before you start billing, so that when you start billing and it's coming through, there won't be any issues, in theory. But that's why they say they push it out a month or two from when you're getting that contract and signing it, because they need to do whatever they need to do on their end. It is very important to pay attention to these effective dates and don't take for granted it's the signature date. That is where a lot of people get confused, because they'll start seeing those patients right after they sign the contract without realizing there's a separate effective date, and they start seeing patients who are out of network or don't have any out of network benefits, and they end up eating a lot of those costs or upsetting patients, or both. So my three top confusions that you need to be aware of is: one, you need to make sure you're disassociating yourself at every payer if you're coming from a former group, and that they are aware, and they as in the payer is aware, that you're starting over with the contracting and credentialing, and make sure that they are communicating to you that accurate process, instead of going, oh yeah, you're already credentialed with them, this shouldn't be a problem to see those patients. Well, yeah, you were at another entity where you were contracted. So when you start sending those claims with your new tax ID number, new MPI, new address, they're going to say you're out of network because it doesn't match. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the contracting has to come after credentialing. That's why it takes so long, and you need to make sure that you're doing everything in the right order and you're giving yourself plenty of time before starting to see patients. The third thing, the effective date. The effective date is not usually the signature date on the contract, so you need to make sure you pay attention to that. And if you need to negotiate it and see if they will make it effective sooner, sometimes they will, sometimes they won't, but you need to understand. And kind of going off of that is, a lot of times, many plans will no longer retro date anything. Medicaid in a lot of states will, Medicare sometimes will, but you need to make sure that you are asking the payers when you start the credentialing and contracting process if they will allow retro dates to claims from the effective date or not. Because if they say this is the effective date and we will not retro any claims, then that means anybody you see before that effective date is going to be processed as out of network. And in that case, you need to have a plan set up for that situation for those patients. So make sure that whoever's doing credentialing on your behalf disassociates you from your old entity. They understand the process of credentialing, then contracting. They look at the effective date for you, and they ask if they will retro any kind of effective dates to cover patients seen before that, or if it's only from moving forward from the effective date, hard line, no exceptions. If you have any questions, leave those in the comments below. Hit the thumbs up button if today's visit was helpful, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much, you guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.